Your ideas help move this country. You are the American Innovator.
Hi everyone, Paul Akers, and welcome back to the American Innovator. Last week we had Art Byrne on the show, and we talked about lean turnaround, and that show was really well received. I got a lot of great emails. Well, I think this week is also going to be the same kind of show. This week we have David Horsager, who wrote a book called The Trust Edge. And David's going to talk about the 8 pillars of trust. And David is a dynamic speaker. He is very, very thoughtful, and the quality of the material that he's bringing to the table and to the American Innovator is exceptional. I know I learned so much listening to him, not only the content, but just watching the way David carries himself. He's a very enthusiastic and capable and thoughtful speaker, and there's so much to learn from David beyond just the content. Just pay attention to him. He knows what he's doing, and he knows how to do it well. And he's an excellent communicator. But the 8 principles or the 8 pillars of the Trust Edge are significant. I learned a lot. One of them I'm going to carry with me for sure the rest of my life because it really spoke to me a lot. And we're going to get to that one. That's the 8th pillar. And David's going to go through all 8 of them now on the American Innovator. And I think you're going to love the show. His book is fantastic. I've downloaded it. It's available on Audible as well as you can get it at Amazon. And David has a great offer at the end of the show to be able to get some information from him and further resources that our listeners from the American Innovator can take advantage of. And David will talk about that. The audio quality of the tape is good, not perfect. It was done on a Skype video conference call. A lot of times Skype is great. Sometimes it's not perfect. This one is very good, but not perfect. There's a couple spots, but it's absolutely doable, and you'll be able to hear everything David's saying. Just listen carefully in a couple spots, and we'll go from there. But enjoy this interview with David Horsager and the Trust Edge. It is exceptional. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the American Innovator. We got a fantastic show today, and today we have a guest, David Horsager, and David's going to talk to us about the Trust Edge. He wrote a new book, and it's just phenomenal. I got to go through the notes, and I think you're going to really enjoy what we're going to talk about because it dovetails so perfectly about creating a lean culture and a model of trust. So, David, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me on, Paul.
Well, it's good to have you here, and you have a lot of really edgy things. And when I read through the notes, I thought it was very interesting about the different pillars of trust. I think that's one of the things that stood out to me just right off the bat. I was just like, wow, this is a different way of thinking about it. So why don't we talk first about the pillars, number 1, and then number 2, what the most important pillar is, because I think that's probably the most edgy thing about what you bring to the table.
Well, there's a few things I'm going to get direct about, but maybe I could start, if I could, just with why. Why trust? You know, if I just for 1 second, I mean, really, the first question, before they even ask about the pillars and the research, and of course I did all my graduate research on this. Our company's been doing research and leading the kind of charge on trust in business and leadership, but maybe a 2-second or a 30-second bit on,
I love it.
Is trust just a soft skill? Is it just kind of this soft idea? That's what I thought, and our view is, after the research and everything else, is a lack of trust is your biggest expense. It's your biggest cost. And so people might think it's soft, and if you think it's soft, by the way, ask Tiger Woods. One breach of trust, or 27 breaches of trust, and he lost millions in weeks, hundreds of millions by now. Your credit score is a trust score. The more you're trusted by the lender, the less you pay over the course of the loan. The Penn State, because of one person, is projected to lose $1 billion over the next decade because of one person's breach of trust. A supplier you trust, one fax or one call's enough. Supplier you don't trust, so much damage. So to me, you know, in the book, and it's pretty fun and pretty cool and colorful and all that, but you look at page 20, and this is what we found from the research. In fact, ahead of us, Columbia University Professor Whitney said, we think mistrust doubles the cost of doing business. My view now is it's way more than that, but every time trust goes up, these things start to happen, and maybe you can see it there, maybe you can't, but page 20, you can just go to our site. Every time trust goes up, costs go down, time goes down, productivity goes up, and it's been such a fascinating bit of research. And now we've seen it. We've seen the ideas as we get into the pillars. We've seen people say it saved our marriage. We've seen people say it tripled our sales. We've seen it's made us, manufacturers say it's made us more productive than ever. But the bottom line is, first, people need to understand it's not just a soft skill. In fact, it's the uniqueness of the greatest leaders, organizations, and companies and radio show hosts of all time.
Right. I love that concept, because I really think it is that underpinning of a great company. And I know that when I speak all the time, David, people go, well, how do you trust your people that much? They're going to make all these mistakes. I go, I know they're going to make those mistakes, and those mistakes are going to cause more learning, and we're going to have a stronger team. But at the root, I trust them. And why do I trust them? For me personally, I trust them because I think each individual is unique, has enormous capacity, and I believe if properly developed, they can do incredible things. So I bring to the table trust because of my belief system. Let's talk about the pillars, and what are the pillars, and how does that work for you? And
yeah, okay. Well, out of the research came these 8 pillars. These were the, of course, when they come out of research, they just come out as uniquenesses. And then now I call them pillars because I think they hold up this greatest advantage of all time, being trusted, or what I call the book, the trust edge, this great advantage of being trusted. So 8 pillars came to the top. And I think, first of all, I should say, some things maybe aren't overly surprising in some ways, but some things are a little surprising in that, people think, oh, when I ask people, well, what's trust to them? Oh, it's just honesty, or it's just this or just that. And the truth is, those that had the trust edge, or this advantage of being high efficiency, highly effective, high revenue, low cost, they had all 8 pillars, and I'll share briefly what that means as we go through it. But so it was really important that they had all 8, not just honesty, in other words, not just character. So maybe should I whip through them all quick?
You should whip through them, but I just want to say, when you say the one that's the most important, I think that's going to be the most shocking in a lot of ways, because it's so evident, but yet we miss it so much. But go ahead.
Should I start or end with that one?
You can do whatever you want. You know what you're doing.
I'll put it at the end.
Okay.
Okay. Let me start it this way as I talk about it in the book. Although when I speak, I actually start with the one you're talking about, because I just can't get anywhere without starting with it when I speak. But I'll do that at the end here in this time.
Good. We'll put a little edge on this whole thing.
These 8 pillars made the most trusted leaders and organizations of all time, which in turn made the most successful people in impact, and if it was a for-profit, in income. So fundamentally, it's not trust is earned, and here's how you do it. It doesn't matter if it's in your marriage, your friends, your family, as a brand. This is the reason we trust a brand. This is the reason we trust a person or organization. 8 pillars. Number 1 pillar is clarity. People trust the clear, and they mistrust or distrust the ambiguous. So if it's a salesperson, if you're clear about the benefits, not about how cool you are, but about the benefits of this, I might buy it. If you're clear in the vision as a leader, I might follow you. If you're clear, clarity is trusted, ambiguity is distrusted. Number 2, compassion. Don't underestimate the power of actually caring about people. We see this all the time. In fact, today I was just reading a new article came out today on the power of compassion and appreciation, and how, in fact, the article I read today showed, it was a year-long study that showed 12x return on basically those organizations that were more compassionate and appreciative. Not in a mamby-pamby type of way, not in a not in this new idea that people are racing their kids by. Appreciate your kids and just appreciate them for sitting on the couch and breathing. We don't want that. We want appreciation when people do something well, and we want to create a climate of genuine compassion.
I love it.
Wait, so the book about it.
And that's not typical corporate. That's not typical corporate America to say, "Oh, we got to have this compassionate culture."
And people don't get how it ties to the bottom line. That does not mean you don't have high standards. It does not mean we don't fire people. People say to me all the time, "Oh, if I need to have that compassion pillar, so I better not fire that person." That doesn't mean that. Some of you are being wuss leaders because you're not you're being non-compassionate to everybody else on your team, because you're letting this guy suck the marrow of life out of your teams, and you think you're being compassionate because you never fire anybody when that guy's got to go. But there's a way of doing it. There's a way of being compassionate. There's a way of even in the way we fire. I had a guy I had to let go not too long ago, and people would say, well, you only had to do 2 weeks. I gave him 2.5 months notice. Why? Because I wanted to help him find another job. Everybody's a great person. Everybody, he just was not a fit here.
Right.
So we want to help him be his best somewhere else. He knew that. We knew that. And he wasn't finding a job as quickly as we thought, so we're not going to just throw him on the street. People know that about us, and so they love to work here. They know that we are compassionate, and there's real value in it, even in the bottom line, if it's just not the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
Number 3 is character.
Okay.
Of course, character is important. And while some people think, oh, it's just character, of course it's character for building trust. That's it. You can't think it is fundamental, but it's not everything. So I might trust Paul with my kids for the weekend because of your high character, Paul, but I won't trust you to give me a root canal because of your competency at that.
Beautiful.
So you've got to have character, but you also have to have some of the future pillars I'll talk about. Let me say one thing about this, and I mentioned it in the book. There's an amazingly powerful story about a leader and character, and it's just, I tell it on the stage and people just are moved and talk about it. But the deal is, those that built this pillar did what needed to be done, when it needed to be done, whether they felt like it or not.
Interesting.
And let me say something. This is uncommon in America. There's a major change that's happened in the last 30 years in America. What does my generation say to our kids on a Friday night when our kids go out for the weekend? Or maybe they go out with their friends Friday night. And parents my age say, have fun. That's what we say.
Right.
But 30 years ago, did our parents say it? Did your parents say that? No way. They said, be careful, and then they said, be good.
You know, it's fascinating that you say that, because that's what I say to my son.
Yeah, you be good. I don't care what you just be good, young man. You be good. Now the truth is that it's not. This is seen over and over and over, and we care more about people having fun than being good. I never tell my kids to have fun. Do you think I got 4 kids? I love my kids. I want them to have fun, but I want them to have the right kind, and I do not want them sitting there on Friday night thinking, oh, well, should we do this or that, friends? Well, Dad said have fun. I guess I'll do this. I want them thinking, Dad said be good. I better do this. And it's not a perfect science, as we all know, but I want them thinking, and we've seen it. We've seen people create business cultures where it's better to be good than it is to have fun. It's better to be good than to have the greatest short-term bottom line. It's better to be good. And where they create that culture, the bottom line catches up. Where
it
they create
always
a different
does.
Yeah, it always does. Enron, Madoff, it always does. And I can give examples. People try to trick me, and they say, well, Madoff was successful for a while, this and that. And I can, every time it catches up, and it even does then. What did Madoff even, by the way, say just a couple months ago from prison? He said, I'm actually at more peace now than I've ever been in my life. You think it wasn't eating him up to have low character for years? It was killer. And so, anyway, the character pillar, you can talk more about how you do that. By the way, in the Trust Edge book, there's simple, bullet point, clear takeaways of how you can create a trusted brand, culture, organization, and how you can take and break down each of these pillars. It's not this theoretical only way. Even though it came out of research, we made it applicable. That's why people are saying they actually use it, and it's making an impact. So the next pillar is competency. You've got to be trusted. You've got to stay fresh, relevant, and capable. Do I want to go to the surgeon who learned that technique 20 years ago and hasn't used it since?
Right.
Or to the surgeon that's staying up on the practices of the top practices of that kind of surgery? Of course, I want to stay on the one that's fresh, relevant, and capable. And this idea, it's unbelievable today, by the way. I just heard the statistic, the average number of books an American reads today after their formal education, whether it's a high school diploma or a PhD, average number of books after their formal education in their lifetime is one. Average is 1.
You got to be kidding me.
Unbelievable. Now you bring that up a little. You bring the average up to 1, as it would be 0 because of all the books you read and I read. But the problem is, there's a truth in every single science. Every science. In business, we call it input leads to output. What you put in is what you get out. Don't we do that in business?
It's called the law of compensation.
Sure.
That's what I call it.
Now, every science says it. The first law of thermodynamics said the energy you put in is exactly the same as the energy you get out.
Right.
In theology, farming, I grew up on the farm in northern Minnesota, big bean farm. You reap what you sow. Don't expect to get this if you're going to put that in. You reap what you sow. Basic psychology says thoughts you put in lead to desires, which lead to actions. That's why you've got to be careful what you put in your mind, right? So thoughts lead to desires. That guy didn't just get caught in adultery. He was thinking about it a little bit. It became a desire. Soon it was acted on. So, well, physiologically, we know it's true too. Try eating a bad burrito and see what comes out, right? So, so it always leads to output. Now, we've got to think about this. In the book, I give these 7 ideas of how to put the right stuff in. People can watch great shows like you create. They can listen to good podcasts. They can read. But what do most people do? They sit back and they want to relax and watch TV, and they take in a bunch of garbage and they expect to have different output. And that's just not going to happen. It's a law. You've got to put good input in if you're going to get good output. You've got to stay relevant and capable, especially in this fast-paced, high-tech, global culture that we live in. Plus, it's fun. It's fun to stay fresh, relevant, and capable. So that's competency pillar. The next pillar is commitment. The commitment pillar, it's fascinating what's happened to brands like Harley-Davidson. If you would have put $1 in to Harley-Davidson stock 25 years before 2007, you would have put your dollar in one of the top 25 stocks in America, and you would have become almost $18,000 in return. These, I mean, people, of course, if you'll get it tattooed on your body, you must be committed, right? And it's the number tattoo in America. But those brands that created a fan base, American Girl doll and John Deere and Apple, these committed brands, not just committed brands, but committed people, you create this pillar, and it's critical. One of the biggest problems, by the way, with this pillar of commitment is individuals. It's New Year's Day in America. We make New Year's resolutions, and 90% of the people that make a resolution don't keep it for 3 weeks. And because they don't keep a commitment to themselves, they believe nobody else can, or they're skepticism, opposite of trust. And we have a real problem. You've heard the idea, of course, love your neighbor as yourself. I mean, it precludes it. If you don't love yourself at all, you have a hard time loving others. Now, there's truth there. We see it all the time. People that don't love themselves at all treat others terribly. Same with trust. If you don't trust yourself at all, you won't trust others or build a culture of trust. You've got to start by creating trust in yourself and being able to trust yourself. How do you do it? Only way. This is the whole chapter, by the way, on rebuilding trust. How BP is doing it in the Gulf Shore. This is how individuals do it. The only way to rebuild trust is not just saying you're sorry, like many people do. A friend in the Netherlands, a CEO, he came over to America, and I said, what did you notice as a difference? He said, oh, that's easy. Americans say they're sorry all the time, and they don't mean it. They just they apologize all the time. They say, I'm sorry I'm late. No, you're not. You're late all the time. You're not. I'm sorry. No, you're not. You never would do that report.
So there's no behavioral change at all.
Apology on its own doesn't matter. It is good to start with a genuine apology.
Sure.
But the only way to rebuild is to make and keep a commitment. The only way I'll have a possibility of trusting you again is if you make and keep a commitment. You've got to make and keep commitments. So my point, don't make so many. Don't tell your kids, oh, absolutely won't. But when you make one, mean it. In my office here, I'm sitting in my office in Minnesota right now, and about a year and a half ago, I got my whole team together, and I got the company next to us that we're good friends with. I got the general manager together, and I shook hands with him, and I said, if I'm not at my high school weight by May 1st, 50 pounds, I need to lose 50 pounds. If I'm not at my high school weight, I'll give you $2,500. Well, you know, that my wife, I'm going to turn this off. My wife was not super excited about this idea, you know, but I knew $20 wouldn't motivate me, and I knew I wanted to show a commitment. I said, now it's not a bet. If I don't make it, I pay him $2,500. If I do make it, I don't pay him $2,500. It's not any you make more or less or lose.
It's a commitment to yourself.
Absolutely. So when I get on the scale that May 1st, what would happen if I wasn't 50 pounds less? Is the worst thing the $2,500? Absolutely not. Scale on May 1st and not been 50 pounds less, I would have lost my team that day because I made a commitment and didn't keep it. Even worse than that is I would have lost trust, a little bit more trust in myself. And that is even worse. We've got, don't make so many, take them serious, make serious commitments. I challenge my people to make 90-day commitments. 90 days, not a 5-year plan, not a whatever plan, but a 90-day commitment. We can do a lot in 90 days. It changes people 90 days. This whole idea of you can change a habit in 21 days that motivational speakers say, I just don't think it's true. I mean, unless it's 21 days, it doesn't work. It's not.
Well, David, I'm going to tell you, I got to interrupt you because you said so many awesome things, but I think that last one was money in the bank because it's tangible and it allows our listeners and everybody who's listening to you to realize that where the rubber hits the road is make less commitments and keep them. Not make the commitments and make sure you keep them. Make less commitments. Less is more to build the trust edge.
Absolutely. Look, kids, I've got 4 kids. I love them so much. But as you know and I know, every choice is a sacrifice. And I'm speaking at conferences and I feel called to speak, coach, and on this important topic. So I have to be gone some. So do I tell my kids I'll be there when I can't be there or when I might not be there, when the flight might not get back in time? Absolutely not. I tell them why. You know what? Daddy's called to this message, and he's also called to be your dad. And I'm going to be I give it all my am to be a great dad. I don't sit there and play games on the plane on the flight home. I work so that when I get off the plane, I can be home instead of, I'm amazed by people who sit up first class and they play around on games, and you hear them call their wives right when they land and say, oh, I got to go into the office for a while. And they're sitting there doing nothing to keep a home commitment. So anyway, there's so much I can say about the commitment pillar, and there's some to follow in the book. But next pillar, connection. Connection. We found that people were most trusted that had the ability or had the trust edge when they had the ability to connect and collaborate with others. So they weren't just islands to themselves. They weren't independent or codependent. They were interdependent. Who has done it they had this ability to work together, to collaborate. And it's interesting. I'm up here in Minnesota. Something fascinating that happened in the last decade here. We had a Republican governor from Minnesota, and there was a Democratic governor from Wisconsin. And they got together, and they were usually kind of rubbing. But they got together and they said, if we work together on the way we snowplow the state line, we would save a lot of money if you would go to the next town, or this one would go all the way up to the next town and all this stuff. Anyway, they ended up saving our states $10 million each. And I thought, thank you. We can connect, we can collaborate, we can work together. I'll give you one hot tip for individuals out there. What is the most connecting trait in the world? What is the most I'll say it this way. What's the most magnetic trait in the world? And a lot of times people think, oh, it's probably charisma, or it's a smile, or it's all these things. And you know what? They aren't. We know a lot of charismatic politicians we want to throw up around. A lot of people, that's not the magnetic trait. The most magnetic trait of all time, from the research, and I can go into also another bit of research here, but I'll just say it and you can look at the research. The number 1 most magnetic trait of all time, gratitude. Love to be around grateful people. It's not, if we could teach our salespeople to be more grateful for that opportunity to meet with that person, or just grateful in life for freedoms and whatnot, we'd love to be around them.
Awesome. Awesome. Absolutely awesome.
Gratitude's magnetic. I can go into it more. Next, contribution. Contribution speaks to the idea that at the end of the day, we need to see results. You can have a lot of character, but if you don't give me the results I asked for or expected, I'm not going to trust you. On the other hand, you can give a lot of results, like some salespeople I know, and not have compassion or character, and over time I won't trust you either. You've got to have all 8 pillars. If you're a leader, in the book, there's 6 ways to motivate contribution in your team. 6 ways, 6 E's for motivating contribution. You can look that up, and it's fantastic. The final pillar, the king of the pillars, as I talked to you before, Paul, consistency. It's being the same every time. I trust sameness, for good or bad. Like I said, you're late all the time, I'll trust you to be late. You do this all the time. You speak to people this way when I'm in the room, out of the room, whatever you're consistent at. A brilliant idea really is interesting, but it's not trusted yet. It's only trusted if you repeat it, if you're always that way. This is the problem with some of the banks I work with. You know, the teller's all sweet, and then they meet with the loan officer, and they're not that way. It's like, you want a bank that's on brand on, or a really fascinating story today is Caribou Coffee, #2 to Starbucks in North America, and some people haven't even heard of them. In Canada, they still think it's Tim Hortons, and out west, the east, they still think it's Dunkin' Donuts. But Caribou Coffee went like this because they are so consistent. They're consistently.
David, I got to tell you a story because it's such a powerful, and this is why that concept of all your concepts, I think they're all fantastic. But that one particularly hit me because I reflected back on my 14 years in business in the company that I'm in right now. And I have a certain group of people around me that are unbelievably consistent. And I thought, wow, it is such a big deal because when I reflected on what you said, I said, I'm always giving those people more responsibility. I'm always giving those people more raises. Those people always take up less of my time. The second I think of something in my brain and I hand it over to them, it's done. I don't even have to worry about it again. I don't have to double check because they are so consistent. And when I realize consistency and trust are like this,
absolutely,
I realize how important it is for my own life, and then to hire those kinds of people. That was one of the key characteristics, and it's the #1 pillar.
Because look, you can have, if you're not consistent in your caring of others, it's not compassionate. You can have character, but if you're not consistently high character, it's no character at all. Consistency is king. This is why we trust McDonald's. We don't even like McDonald's maybe, but we trust them because they've given me the exact same burger in Frankfurt, Tokyo, and Cleveland. I know exactly what to expect. Same burger. It might be made of something different. I have no idea, but it looks the same, smells the same, pickles off-centered everywhere I go. It's the same, right? So we trust sameness. And that's absolutely the same with people. It's the same with brands. If you want to be more trusted, you've got to be repeating. You've got to be the same. And by the way, repeaters are not only trusted, they're successful. As with all this stuff, you think of a salesperson, salespeople that they get a big contract, but then they don't get a big contract. And then they get a big contract, and then they're up like this. Great salespeople are just consistent. They're just doing the little things every day. First thing in the morning, they do the little things. Great leaders. Most great leaders actually aren't big personalities. Great leaders, oh yeah, you have the Jack Welches and people that wrote the books, but the best leaders generally, they're even, they're consistent, they're not big entertainers, they're not big, even charismatic as people would say a charisma, they're consistent though. They're absolutely, people trust them.
Well, the greatest example of that is Warren Buffett in the way he invests in companies. He's looking for fabulously managed companies that are very consistent. He wants leaders that can produce day in and day out for the longevity of his financial profile. It's such an obviosity, but often so missed because we focus on the wild, crazy, charismatic person, and it's not what it's all about. It's interesting.
Yeah. So that's on the 8 pillars. Happy to offer your audience a free something free. If you did want to get the book, The Trust Edge, then we have about $1,000 in value. If you email Ryan@davidhorsager.com or Ryan@thetrusedge.com, just for Paul's viewers, he can give you a free code. If you get the book, you just email that you got it, and he'll give you a code, and you go, and there's 15 videos you can look at. There's a self-assessment you can use. Most people have to buy those things. You can have them. I just want to offer that to Paul, to your team, and to everybody listening. If you get the book, email Ryan@davidhorsager, and we'll give you an option to get all that free stuff, so that we're all into what people actually using it, not talking about. No one's going to be able to spell my name after this broadcast. I couldn't even spell it till 5th grade, but let me tell you, they will remember the idea of trust and what it takes to get there. And once you build those habits, everything changes.
David, I just can't thank you enough. I learned so much. You know, this is stuff that I think about all the time, but you really helped me focus and understand what it is that I was doing that was working that maybe I didn't understand. I was doing it intuitively, but I didn't really intellectually understand how important it was. And you brought that all together, and I deeply appreciate it. I know our listeners, because I know the emails I get from people when they have great shows. When we have great shows like this, they're just going to say, that was unbelievable. So I recommend buying the book and memorizing the book and going over it consistently to make sure you don't forget these powerful principles. David, thanks a million for doing not only the interview, but for doing great work that changes lives.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Okay, we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
It's so amazing how you fall to
The American Innovator has been brought to you by FastCap. To hear more, just go to theamericaninnovator.com.